So, what are the intellectual foundations of this theory? Well, it relies heavily on the work of the postmodern left that emerged in France after World War II. So we've already looked at how it conceives of the world in terms of binomial groupings like Marx did, but then it borrows this concept of power from the postmodern left. In particular, I'm going to go on a bit of a digression here and talk about Michel Foucault's conception of power, which this theory relies on. So, for Michel Foucault, power was not just a means of achieving a specific political end. It wasn't necessarily always explicit, but power was generative of social reality. Uh, in his book, Discipline and Punish, which is very popular, it's a seminal work, he goes through this thought experiment of the panopticon. What is the panopticon? Well, it's a prison where there is a tower at the very center, and the prison guards are stationed within that tower, and all around are prison cells. So he Foucault gets this idea, I think, borrows this idea, I think, from Bentham, Jeremy Bentham. But essentially, what the illusion or the impression that the panopticon prison creates is that the guards are at all times watching the prisoners in their prison cells. And the effect that Foucault notes that this has is that power becomes internalized within the very subjectivity of the prisoners, so that the acts they perform, they are performing because they see themselves as prisoners who are constantly being surveilled. So you don't actually need explicit power to operate on the prisoners when you can give them the impression that they're constantly being watched. So the prisoners, Foucault notes, in and of themselves, on their own accord, will get up in the morning, you know, make tidy up their prison cell, do all sorts of activities, and the effect that the panopticon has on them is to internalize the structure of power within their subjectivity, so that they do not need to be explicitly compelled. And so that is how this intersectional left looks at power. So when it looks at the structure of white supremacy, when it talks about white supremacy, it's not necessarily talking about explicit power or explicit laws, but it's talking about, you'll hear this word a lot, structural trends, right? So it's saying power operates through a bunch of implicit notions that have become internalized within the subjectivity of people in society that makes them act a certain way. So the way the power structure of white supremacy operates is that people see whiteness as the norm, as the default, and that is the basic notion of power that intersectionality relies upon.